going to be with him, and just to ensure that the promises he has made come to be fulfilled. And at the end of it, we see Jacob making a vow. So he decides to worship God, he decides to pray to God, and he raises a pillar which he pours an oil on, and he makes a vow to God. And lastly, we have read from Philemon, and Philemon's, this was a letter from Paul to Philemon. And Philemon was a convert who Paul had led to Christianity. But he had a slave who was called Onesimus. And Onesimus had stolen and decided to run away. And having run away, he encountered Paul in Rome. He went to Rome, but there, again, he met Paul. And he also got converted. And therefore, now that he had run away, you know, in those times among the Colossians, because Philemon lived in Colossae. And for the Colossians, any slave had no right. And so once you are a slave, you are bound by your master's laws. And you cannot leave to go anywhere. You are bound there. So Onesimus disobeyed and disrupted that law and took off or ran away, having also done a lot of injustice to the master. So by the end of it, he is converted, and Paul makes him to return. So as he's returning, he's sent by another fellow servant of God, Tychicus, and they come with letters. One letter to the Colossian church and another letter to Philemon, so that Philemon can accept back the slave who had run away. And therefore, we see actually a lot of things going on. Now, each one of us has a name. What does your name represent? What does your name represent? Have you ever thought about that? The name that I have, whether it is Rosemary or Margaret, or even that Luo name or that cultural name you have, what does it represent? Does it represent the attributes of God in you? Can God be seen in you? Because our names bear a lot of weight in terms of the attributes and the gifts that God places in us. And therefore, I want us to look at that one of Jacob. We are aware that Jacob, before his name changed to be Israel, it simply meant a deceiver. Deception was so much in his life. And you look at his life from the time he starts interacting with his brother, and we realize that he used deception through and through. And even when he's running, in this particular chapter, there is deception coming from the mother, and Jacob being part and parcel of it. So they have connived to deceive. And so, in as much as it is saving his life, but there's lies that are running on. And so at the end of it, we get Jacob running away as a deceiver, but in the long run, he meets God while he's running away. And so as he meets God, God introduces himself. And at that particular moment, that's when Jacob realizes that he needs to worship God. And he comes out strongly and does the ritual of worshiping God at that time. And then he makes a vow. My issue here is, as a Christian, how have you been worshiping God? And are there lies running around in your life? Are there deceptions that are running in your life? Be it in your family, and I'll narrow down on the family. How many lies have you given to your wife? How many lies have you given to your husband? How many lies have you given to your children? And even to any other visitor. So let us think about that and see how best do we make amends with God, because God does not lie, and he does not delight in lies. Even when you read Psalm 34, it tells us clearly that he's not a God who delights in lies. And therefore, where are you? Number 2, in the life of Jacob, we realize that Jacob took time to worship God, and he did not just tell him, thank you, you have introduced yourself to me. But he takes time and says, this must be the house of God. And then with reverence, he puts up a pillar and pours oil. Praise be to God. And when he does that, and he worships God, that is in the morning, after the dream in the night. Let me tell you, brothers and sisters, it is the nature of the prayers that you offer to God that will bring you a breakthrough. It's the type of prayer that gives God that divine ground for him to be able to manifest himself. So how do you pray to God? Sometimes, we just do it as a formality. The church says we must be praying. But when we do it as a formality, we are missing out. And that is why challenges that are accosting us in life as a family are not going away. Because depending on how you bring your prayers before God, are they done in reverence? Are they done in faith? Are they done in reverence? And are they done in faith? And are they done fervently? Because formality or familiarity with telling God things every day is what makes us not realize the uniqueness and the importance of God in our lives. Even for those who are looking for jobs, how do you seek God to assist you get that job? Because what God is expecting is that fervent and faithful prayer. And let me tell you, brothers and sisters, sometimes when you do certain things, God will never fail to answer. Praise be to God. Certain things that you do will bring God down. You are looking for that job. You are looking for that important thing in your life. Like sometimes for me, when I go down before God and it is a financial issue, how do I go before him? I go before him placing on his altar my payslip. I place on his altar my bank card. And I place anything that is related to any source of income that I intend to get. And worship him with these things on his altar. And let me tell you, God answers. Some of us are looking for jobs. We just write letters and throw them around. Can you take that letter and place it on the altar of God before you release it out? Place it there. There are those who are in school or college. Every day, can you place those books? Can you place those assignments before the altar of God and see if God will not work? He will rise up and do something for you. There are those who have done it and it has worked for them. Praise be to God. Let us just remember that our worship of God must be in reverence. Handle it with fear. Handle it with respect. And when you do that, you'll realize even your nature or your posture during prayer will change. Praise be to God. So that we worship God. And it is through prayer that we actually prepare the ground for divine intervention by God. Without that Holy Spirit being there in that prayer, then God may not manifest. So prepare the ground. It is that prayer. Remember Jacob, as he was running, deep within him, he's wondering who can be of his help. Because he's actually running from a real threat. I don't know what is a threat to you as we are talking. But if it is there, how do you approach it so that God can manifest for you in dealing with this issue? So it is prayer that will make that environment. And when it is well done, that environment or that ground that your prayer has prepared will attract God himself. And whether you like it or not, you will hear him talk to you. Praise be to God. So let us learn to bring real, fervent, and reverent, and faithful prayers before our God, and just to worship him. And when you are doing it, don't do it alone. You have a family. Let them be nurtured in that, so that the children in your family get to know that this is how things are done. This is how we can approach God. This is how we can worship him. And another thing I want us to come clear about, Jacob is making a vow to God. If you lead me and provide this and bring me back, then I will give you this. That is a good prayer. However, again, if you look at it, you realize that this is a conditional prayer. He's giving conditions to God, which means if God does not do what he intends, then he will not even give that tenth of it. And so, in a similar situation, what vows have you made? And brothers and sisters, let us be very careful with the vows we made, especially to God. Vows that we make even to people who are needy around us. Because these are things that happen around. You come into a situation, and because you are emotional, you decide to make a vow. You've gone to a funeral, there are kuna mayatima. You decide to make a vow. I'll do this. And when you have made it, God keeps it. That is a debt on you. And then it comes the time and you realize you don't have the resources. You had made a vow. And so you start thinking, okay,